Welcome back. Our conversations continue here in Davos. Joining me now is Sir Martin Sorrell with his take on the world, and I'm sure it's going to be a provocative
My take on the world, my word. All in 30 seconds.
All in 30 seconds. Thanks very much. Well, you can do that, can't you?
No.
But thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
You know, Davos has just about started, but you're coming
Hasn't started yet. In a few hours, and you're asking me what my take is on Davos, and it hasn't even bloody well started.
But, you know, we've got, by all accounts, 2023 turned out to be better than most people had feared.
Well, we didn't see that. And I think this time last year, clients were worried about interest rates rising, so they were very cautious. They were super cautious, and they didn't really finalise their corporate budgets, let alone their marketing budgets, until well into 23. This year, the difference is they're still cautious because the geopolitical risks are huge. And don't seem to be receding, and almost seem to be, in my view,
escalating.
Impenetrable. I mean, you know, China, US, Russia, Ukraine, and Iran being the three big ones, and they are, for the first time in my life, I mean, I'm 78, and I can't think of a year like this. Maybe go back to 1963 when I was hiding under a desk in my geography class at school, worried about, you know, a nuclear explosion when the Russian ships turned back from Cuba. So I think this year it's different on the client side because they see interest rates either. Well, I saw somebody from the ECB saying that maybe there'll be no cuts this year. Maybe that's true in Europe, but in America it looks like the Fed will cut at some point in the year, and therefore they're probably a little bit less cautious than they were last year. So it's less worse, I guess, than last year. But there's what I referred to, I think Australian trade magazines thought it was an inappropriate phrase, but a cocktail of risk, a cocktail of political risk, which I think is almost unprecedented. And we don't have the sort of super global, we don't have the Reagans or the Thatchers or the Kissingers or the Blairs, or the, you know, we don't have the political personalities to pull it together, or the diplomats to pull it together, like we had in previous ages. Maybe this is the rose-tinted, you know, Mad Men, rose-tinted view of the past. So I think a little bit less worse than last year. Clients are a bit less cautious than last year. We certainly Q4. You know, there was a little bit more confidence returning. But in the media market, the split between linear and digital, the divide is as big as it's ever been, because basically linear in America, for example, is down 10 or 14% if you didn't have, in ad revenues, if you didn't have sports to buttress it.
Yeah.
You know, if you were Fox or Disney and you had sport, live sport, you were down single digits. Whereas digital, the platforms, driven by the packaged goods companies who priced up last year with inflation. You know, a Pepsi in Q2 of last year, I remember, was up, I think, 16% its revenue, and its ad to sales ratio is a fixed percentage or close to. So if prices rise and revenues rise, ad revenues rise, and the money's gone into the platforms, because if you look at Alphabet, if you look at Meta, if you look at Amazon, and even in a Chinese context, Alibaba, Tencent, and of course ByteDance with TikTok outside China, their revenues last year were strong. We haven't seen Q4, but they look like Google will be. So the world media market's about 950 billion, digital's about 650 billion. Google will be about 225, Meta 125, so that's 350, and Amazon 50. So 400 billion out of that 650 is in those three platforms. And then on the other side, we don't get good data on Alibaba and Tencent in China, but we sort of feel that TikTok outside China went from 10 to 14 billion. Probably ByteDance as a whole, including China and the rest of TikTok, went from 60 to 90. So the big platforms, which will get bigger with AI, become even more important, along with Apple and Microsoft through OpenAI and NVIDIA, and probably Adobe, Oracle, Salesforce. those companies are going to get even more successful as a result of AI.
So big tech is only going to get bigger, and the move towards digitization and digital platforms is going to be accelerated even further. Do you believe 2024 is then going to turn out to be a year of consolidation as far as media is concerned, even more consolidation on the media side?
Well, the linear people that I talk to say we'll see a continuation of the downtrend that we saw last year. So if America was down, let's say 5 to 14%, depending on who you're talking about, you might see another year. It reminds me a little bit of print in the UK. I remember there were 2 years in a row where it was down 25%, 2 years in a row. So 50% came out of ad revenues in a year. Now, it's not as precipitous as that and not as dire as that, but there is no doubt that linear TV is under huge pressure. You see, for example, Disney openly looking to sell ABC or JV with somebody on ABC with difficulty of finding somebody to do that. So the skids are under linear. Digital will continue to strengthen. It's 65% of that 950 figure.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be 70% by 2025. So we'll go up to about this year, I would think, to about 68%, and then hit 70% next year. So it is the dominant force in the market, and will continue to be. And AI will drive it more, because AI affects visualization and copywriting. So we can produce ads much faster. Hyper-personalization, so we can personalize ads even more than the famous Netflix model. Media planning and buying is going to come under attack, because it's globally, the holding companies probably have about 10 to 15,000 people in their networks. And most of the processes are semi-automated or manual. So AI and the algorithms can take out the people there, and you're going to see, I think, there's 250,000 people employed in the media planning and buying industry in one way or another. You're not, with all due respect to them, you're not going to need 250,000, and the outputs from the algorithms are going to be far more effective and human judgment. And then the other two areas that are really interesting is general efficiency. Outside broadcasting, we have an exclusive relationship with NVIDIA, Adobe, AWS, to reduce the cost of, with an AI solution, reduces the cost of outside broadcasting by something like 90%. Which we are the exclusive integration.
That would be helpful for all of us.
Well, you won't need broadcast trucks anymore. You'll have an AI solution.
Well, we've done away with broadcast trucks.
But the AI solution reduces the cost by about 90%. So that's a hugely important. And then lastly, but not least, is the apart from general efficiency, is the democratization of knowledge. We have 900 people working on our largest account. If I can get every one of those people to know what the other 899, human bots, get everybody to know. And, inside organizations, that will flatten organizations, make them more efficient. So in a world that's fragmenting, where North and South America are becoming more important, the Middle East is becoming more important, Asia, and particularly India, are becoming more important. Democratization of knowledge is going to be really, really important in terms of improving efficiency and effectiveness.
You know India well. You've been
sort
an
of.
India watcher.
You can never learn enough about India.
That is true.
Yeah.
But you've been an observer and a keen watcher and a committed investor for a long period of time now in India.
Yeah.
So how has the story changed to your mind in the last few years, and how are you seeing it play out from here?
I think Modi's made a huge difference. Somewhat controversial for some people, but I think he's a master of brand development for India. And election coming up, and I assume he's going to be re-elected and have another period to take brand India even further. I mean, there's still more work to be done, but the Indian entrepreneurs are superb. And they've grown now from India. I mean, I guess the best advice is, exhaust yourself domestically and then expand internationally. But many of them have not even exhausted the opportunities in India. And if you look forward to 2050, India will be the third largest economy in the world. It's already the most populous country, or close to it, on the planet. but the pecking order probably will be China, US, India, Indonesia, and Germany as the top five. So Asia will have three of the top five. So the Premier League will definitely be, or IPL or whatever you want to call it, will definitely be Asia. So, I think India is on fire in a good way, and benefiting from the geopolitical risks as a result of the lack of relationship between US and China, benefiting also probably from Ukraine and Russia, because if you and I were on a board, would we invest in a destabilized Eastern Europe? And we don't know what the result is going to be. And of course, last but not least, the rising power of Iran through its proxies. Those three issues are huge issues to deal with. And the first one, of course, puts India in the box seat in an Asian context. If you're big in China, and I define big as more than 15 to 20% of your sales come from China, you probably don't want to go bigger, given the Taiwan risk. And we saw in the election, probably the result there was probably the most stable result. The presidential election went to the DPP. Yeah. The Congress stays with the KMT. The PPP become the kingmakers, I guess, in that context. But that's a little bit more balanced and nuanced than if the PPP had won both, or indeed the KMT had won both. But I would expect China to increase the pressure on Taiwan, not through invasion, but through ratcheting up the economic pressure, because it is front and center part of President Xi's legacy and policy. And if you look at his New Year's speech, it was front and center for him, and apparently in his APAC talks with President Biden too, at the back end of last year. I mean, things seem to have improved a little bit between US and China. The military are talking to one another. Yes,
re-engagement,
But I think it's still pretty tough. And then we have to wait for, half the world's going to the polls this year.
Exactly.
70 countries, I think, have polls this year. And a critical one, obviously, is in November in the US. And there's the specter of Trump hanging over, which I think, for the North American economy and North American business, I don't think North American business people easily admit to this, but deep down, they're akin with President Trump, because he favors low tax and low regulation. But what it means for the world, we'll be waking up to X's every morning, not tweets, and it will be back to the future, back to 2016 if he gets to the finishing line. Some people here don't necessarily think that either Biden or Trump will be the candidates. It seems to me it's getting a little bit close to the election to predict that, but we'll see. I mean, many a slip between cup and lip. But that's obviously a key election in the context of
Absolutely. Many key elections, but of course that's going to be the big one to watch out for. But you talked about social media and regulation, and linked to what we are seeing in the political arena as well. The need, the WEF, for instance, has highlighted disinformation and misinformation as key global risks in the Global Risk Report.
Yeah, I sort of a little bit. I mean, it depends on what period you're talking about. Maybe in the long term. But in the short term, the three things that I mentioned, I think, are key. I mean, forgetting things like climate change in North Korea and everything else. So, there's a lot on people's plates, and there's a lot of plate spinning to do. So I would say the AI risk, the risk of bad actors, is there. I think self-regulation is going to be the key. I don't think that any government agency can hope. The CMA hired, I think, 300 people in the UK as the regulatory body, and were congratulating themselves. I mean, that is a drop in the bucket or the ocean to deal with. I mean, the tech companies are in the box seat. As I said to you before, I think they will become even more powerful. And if you equate GDP with market cap, I mean, you've got 3 trillion, Microsoft and Apple are around 3 trillion. So they're almost as big as Germany. In a worldwide sort of GDP context. So these are big bananas, and they are companies that have the resources, and they're going to have to exercise self-restraint, and the platforms are going to have to exercise self-restraint. No, not dissimilar. I mean, we've seen the platforms take significant moves. You know, Meta, you know, the cause of all evil, according to the media, you included, has been Meta, which I think was extremely unfair. And we've seen a resurgence in Meta this year, quadrupled. And you know, it's been the year of efficiency. And they're doing an extremely good job and continuing to grow. Obviously, Alphabet and Amazon, I mentioned before. So these companies are extremely strong. They have taken steps to deal with brand safety and privacy and electoral intrusion. But they're going to have to redouble their efforts, because AI is an extremely powerful tool for good and an extremely powerful tool for evil as well. And getting the balance right is going to be difficult. So I would sort of cavil a little bit or differ a little bit on the timing of that risk. I think it's more a long-term risk. The interesting thing is, from CES last week, the use cases that people have developed for AI, there are very few, if any, so far. I mean, we see some stuff in R&D and medical and, you know, sports and entertainment maybe, but the use cases for clients doing major digital transformation using AI are few and far between. And 24, I think, will be the year where we start to see the development of use cases which will enable NVIDIA, the major chip manufacturer, to, you know, it's building its chip supply like this, and it needs to take it to another level. And I think 24 will be the beginning where we start to see use cases, case studies coming out that will be extremely effective and will drive efficiency. I didn't mention Europe in our perambulation around the world. And in Europe, where growth is harder to come by, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, and the UK, cost efficiency driven through AI is going to be critically important. So you've got two things going on, basically. One is select your markets, like India, where you think, Vietnam, Indonesia, where it happens to be, where you think growth is going to be, and also take out cost, become more efficient. And AI with blockchain, not so much crypto, with AI, with quantum computing is going to be critical.
Well, Martin Sorrell, plenty of plate spinning that we've done.
Hopefully none have fallen to the ground as yet.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy your Davos when it starts.
Thank you for joining us today and appreciate your time.
I'm exhausted. I want to go home already.
Well, you'll have to wait a little bit longer. Okay. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this CNBC-TV18 special. We'll take a quick break and we're back in a minute with more.